My husband walked out on me and our newborn twins because his wealthy mother told him to choose. Months later, he switched on the TV and froze when he saw what I had become. I still remember that morning, the one that broke me. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of baby powder and the faint tang of my own fear. I stood in our cramped New York apartment, cradling my newborn twins, their tiny breaths warm against my chest when Daniel walked in. His eyes, once so bright they could light up my world, were hollow, shadowed by something I couldn't name. I smiled, foolishly believing he had come to start our new life together. But his face told a different story, one that would shatter everything I thought I knew about love. "We need to talk," he whispered, his voice barely cutting through the quiet hum of the city outside. I set the babies in their crib, my hands trembling, and turned to him. "What's wrong, Daniel?" My voice was small, already bracing for the blow. He didn't answer right away. He swallowed hard, his gaze skittering away from mine like a frightened animal. "I can't do this anymore," he said, each word a knife. "I just can't." My heart stopped. The room seemed to tilt, the walls closing in as I repeated, "Can't do what?" My voice was a ghost, barely there. He took a deep breath, as if the words were tearing him apart, but his resolve was iron. "I have to leave." The air turned to ice, my chest tightening as if someone had reached in and crushed my heart. "Leave?" I whispered, the word foreign, impossible. "What do you mean, leave?" He looked at me then, his blue eyes tortured but unyielding. "My mother was right," he said, his voice thick with something like shame. "We don't belong in the same world. I can't stay." Tears burned my eyes, spilling over before I could stop them. I shook my head, refusing to believe it. "You're leaving me? Leaving your own children? Because she told you to?" My voice cracked, raw with disbelief. He didn't answer. In that moment, I saw him for what he'd become. A coward, a puppet dangling on his mother's strings, willing to trade his family for the glittering cage of his inheritance. He turned toward the door, his shoulders slumped under an invisible weight. I wanted to scream, to grab him, to beg him to stay, but my body was frozen, rooted to the floor. "I'm sorry," he muttered, not daring to look back. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot in my soul. I stood there, staring at the closed door, waiting for it to open again, for him to rush back and say it was a mistake. But it didn't. It was just me, my twins, and a heart in pieces. I met Daniel on an autumn afternoon when New York streets were blanketed in golden leaves, crisp and crunching underfoot. I was new to the city, an interior designer fresh out of college, chasing dreams in a place that felt too big for me. He was just a guy in a cafe, charming with a smile that warmed me like sunlight. I didn't know he was Daniel Montgomery, heir to a real estate empire that stretched from Manhattan to Los Angeles. Back then, he was just Daniel, kind, gentle, with eyes that made me feel like I was the only person in the world. We fell in love fast, the way you do when you're young and believe love can conquer anything. He wasn't like other rich men I'd met. He never flaunted his wealth, never made me feel small. Those first months were a dream. Late night walks, his hand in mine, promises whispered under starlit skies. I loved him with every fiber of my being, never imagining that love wouldn't be enough to withstand the weight of his family's name. When I got pregnant, Daniel was overjoyed. He held me close, promising to protect me and our child. Twins, we later learned, forever. But forever is a fragile thing when it's up against Margaret Montgomery. I met her a week after we found out about the pregnancy, at a lavish party in their sprawling estate. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, casting light on walls lined with priceless art. I felt out of place the moment I stepped inside. My simple dress, no match for the extravagant gowns around me. Margaret sat at the room's center, a queen on her throne, her gray eyes slicing through me as she sipped her wine. "Daniel tells me you're pregnant," she said, her voice smooth but cold, like polished steel. "How unexpected." I gripped Daniel's hand, feeling the tension in him, but I didn't know then that she'd already decided I was unworthy. After that night, Daniel changed. He grew distant, lost in thought, his phone buzzing with calls from his mother. When I asked, he brushed it off, saying everything was fine. But I felt the truth growing like a storm cloud. By the time I gave birth to our twins, I knew something was wrong. He was there in the hospital, smiling as he held our babies, but there was a wall between us, invisible but impenetrable. And then came that morning when he walked out, leaving me to face the world alone. The days after were a blur of darkness. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The apartment felt like a tomb, cold and empty, the baby's cries mingling with my own silent sobs. My body ached from childbirth, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the agony of abandonment. I kept replaying that moment. Daniel's guilty eyes, his weak apology, the door slamming shut. I was drained, a shell of myself, drowning in despair. Friends called, worried, but I couldn't face them. How could I explain that the man I loved had chosen his mother's world over ours? One night, as rain tapped against the window, I looked at my twins, so small and innocent, and something shifted. They needed me. If I kept falling apart, who would care for them? Daniel had walked away, but I wouldn't. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and decided to fight. The next day, I started looking for work. Before the twins, I'd worked at a small interior design firm, but my position was gone, replaced while I was on maternity leave. No one wanted a single mother with newborns, someone who couldn't work late or be flexible. Rejection after rejection piled up, each one a blow to my fragile hope. "You're not a good fit," they'd say, or "We need someone fully committed." But I couldn't give up. My baby's eyes, so clear and trusting, kept me going. I cut every expense, learned to live on next to nothing. Childcare was out of reach, so I juggled everything alone. Sleepless nights became my norm, not from grief, but from necessity. One hand changing diapers, the other scrolling job listings. I found freelance interior design work, the pay barely enough to cover rent and formula. I worked late, the glow of my laptop my only light, exhaustion my constant companion. But I wasn't just surviving, I was fighting for my children, for myself. Months passed and the pain dulled, no longer a blade but a lingering ache. I wasn't the broken woman crying in the dark anymore. I was a mother, a provider, carving my own path. One afternoon, folding clothes for my twins, I had an idea. Children's clothing was either overpriced or poorly made. Why not create something better, beautiful, comfortable, affordable? I wasn't a designer, but I'd learned to sew as a child, making dresses for my dolls. I borrowed an old sewing machine from a neighbor and started small. Onesies, leggings, little dresses. At first, they were just for my twins, but when friends saw photos online and asked to buy them, I saw a spark of possibility. Every spare dollar went into fabric and supplies. I taught myself to sew better, to design, to run an online business. It was grueling. Rejections piled up, orders were scarce. I emailed bloggers, joined parenting groups, but nothing seemed to work. One night, watching my baby sleep in the outfits I'd made, I refused to quit. I took better photos, built a website, started a blog about my journey as a single mother. Slowly, orders trickled in. My first customer, a mom in Chicago, sent a payment that brought tears to my eyes. Not for the money, but for the proof I wasn't hopeless. More orders followed, then messages from mothers praising the softness, the care in every stitch. I named my brand Little Blessings, because that's what my twins were, my reason to keep going. The work was relentless. My apartment became a workshop, fabric stacked everywhere, threads spooling across the floor. I woke before dawn to answer emails, sewed during naps, and studied marketing at night. Exhaustion was a weight, but I felt alive. Then one day, a miracle, a mom influencer shared Little Blessings on Instagram, praising its quality. Overnight, orders flooded in. I couldn't keep up, calling a friend to help pack shipments. I found a local workshop to produce my designs, and within 6 months, Little Blessings was a recognized name in children's fashion. A major retail chain emailed, wanting to stock my clothes in their stores. I sat there, hands trembling, my heart swelling as I looked at my sleeping twins. I'd lost so much, but I'd found myself. Years later, I was no longer the woman Daniel left. Little Blessings was in major stores, featured in magazines celebrating women entrepreneurs. I'd opened flagship stores in New York and Los Angeles. my designs worn by children across the country. One Sunday, at the park with my twins, I told him, Daniel stood a few meters away, older, weary, his eyes heavy with sorrow. He approached, hesitant. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me, he said. I looked at him, calm, waiting. Then why are you here? He glanced at the children, then back at me. I saw you in the papers, your success. I was wrong, Amanda. I wasn't surprised. You realized that a little too late, I said evenly. He nodded, regret etched in his face. I'm sorry. Not because I expect forgiveness, but because I regret what I did. I nodded slightly. Are you done? He froze, caught off guard by my calm. Daniel, I've come a long way. None of that has anything to do with you anymore. I stood, walked to my children, and didn't look back. For the first time, I felt light, free. Daniel's life, I later learned, had unraveled. He'd gained everything his mother promised. Wealth, status, but it was empty. One day, seeing me on a talk show, thriving, he realized his mistake. He came to my new home, a far cry from the cramped apartment he'd left me in. I stood in the doorway, confident, unshaken. I was wrong, he said, voice breaking. I should never have left you. I smiled, not with warmth, but with liberation. I don't need to know whether you love me, Daniel. I've built a life I'm proud of, and you're not part of it. I closed the door, leaving him to his regret. He returned to the Montgomery estate, its grandeur mocking his emptiness. Confronting his mother, he saw her for what she was, a manipulator who'd cost him everything. I'm leaving, he told us, walking away from the wealth, the name, the life he'd chosen over us. For the first time, he was free, but it was too late. My home now is warm, filled with my children's laughter. Little blessings I've thrives, a testament to my resilience. I don't resent Daniel anymore. He's a shadow from a past that no longer defines me. One evening, a woman at the park recognized me, praising my story. You've given strength to so many, she said. I smiled, humbled. My journey wasn't just for me, it was for every woman who refuses to be broken. As I tucked my twins into bed, my daughter asked, Did she end up happy, Mommy? I kissed her forehead. Yes, sweetheart, she created her own happiness. I've built my life, my happiness, my future. No one handed it to me. I am no longer the woman who begged for love. I am Amanda, a mother, a creator, a survivor, and I am enough.